Alright, what's going on, guys? Trey back again here to bring you another video. This one's going to be talking about Fedor's next fight. Hopefully not his last, but I guess we'll see how things go. I don't think it'll be his last. I think he's gonna, I think he's gonna keep doing his thing. He did fight twice last year. Before that, the year before, was it three times? Yeah, three times the year before that, and he went on his losing streak there. But otherwise, I think we can expect to see Fedor fight for a little while longer. I think he's going to be like one of these type of guys, like a Ken Shamrock, Dan Severn, any of these type of guys that even though they can't compete for a title anymore and they're not at the top of the game in terms of MMA, they can still compete and draw enough fans that they can make a good amount of money. Now, Fedor is the pinnacle of that. Even though Fedor is not in the UFC, not in Strikeforce, even if he's just fighting Jeff Monson and the pay-per-view is like 20 bucks or whatever, 7.5 million people are still willing to buy that pay-per-view. So it makes sense for them. Fedor is making 10 times more money than he would have made in the UFC per fight. Maybe more, maybe 20 times, who knows? Because we don't know exactly how much Fedor owns of M1 Global. So, when it comes down to it, it just didn't make sense for Fedor to sign with UFC. If you want to hear, more about that, please feel free to check out the video I did 2 videos ago previous to this one. I'll put the link in the right here, annotation, and you can hear my full explanation of that. Basically, Dana White came out and said some things that that Fedor would have made more money in the UFC, yada, yada, yada. It was a mistake. And my rebuttal to that is in that video. So go check that out. So what can we expect for the future of Fedor's career? Well, I think it's going to be much like we've seen since he left Strikeforce. It's going to be guys like Jeff Monson, guys like Ishii and Pedro Rizzo, going forward. And, we all kind of wanted to see Fedor in the UFC, but it doesn't make sense for them financially. Fedor's got too much of a following. Dana White and the Fertittas are not willing to pay him enough. They won't compensate Fedor for his following. He has the biggest following of any fighter in the history of mixed martial arts, and the UFC won't pay him for that. So he's got to put on fights himself. It's just like everybody else. You got a job to do. Is there work there? You want to make some money, you do some work. That's what this is for Fedor. For us, the fans, a lot of people probably within the next year or two are going to stop, following Fedor. But there will always be his loyal fans, such as myself and many of you, that will always stay on with Fedor, up to the point where he gets, really old, to the point where maybe he starts losing to some of these guys, and then it's time for him to either retire or maybe we just fizzle out. But I personally I'm going to watch this fight, Pedro Rizzo against Fedor. I'm still going to be amped and excited to see Fedor fight. My favorite fighter of all time. Now that Alistair Overeem's tested positive for steroids, I can clearly say that my favorite fighter. And everybody loses eventually. If you're going to win straight for 10 years, you're going to lose eventually, and you're going to every fighter gets to a point where they can't continue. They don't have TRT in Russia. They don't have, all that kind of stuff that you can go to a doctor and get, pro hormones that can replace your normal hormones and get you back into the type of shape that you were at when you were 23 or 25 or whatever. Not everyone's going to take that stuff either. Yes, guys like Dan Henderson are fighting at the age of 47 or whatever, however old Hendo is now. And no knock against Hendo, but he's on testosterone replacement therapy. He's got the test levels of a 23-year-old in a 47-year-old man's body, or however old he is. Fedor's not going to do that stuff. He's just going to fight until he just doesn't have it anymore. And for guys like us, I'm still happy to see that Fedor is fighting. It's better than him retiring, I think, even if it's going to be against a guy like Pedro Rizzo. I think Pedro Rizzo is a decent opponent. I mean, he's not a top guy. I would have liked to seen Fedor fought Bobby Lashley or one of these guys, because those aren't top guys either, but they're, at a better age and, more relevant in their career. Pedro Rizzo is a guy that we recently saw him 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, beat Ken Shamrock. And he looked good in the fight. He put the legs to him. Good old Pedro the Rock Rizzo with his kickboxing. Remember some of his flashy knockouts, like the one he got of, was it Mark Coleman, where he kicked him in the face? He's got some really good knockouts. And Pedro Rizzo was in title contention in the UFC 3 times. He had 3 title bouts. He lost each one, lost to Randy Couture twice. A great kickboxer, you know, one of the first great kickboxers we had in mixed martial arts. So to see him go in there against Fedor, that's an exciting fight. You know, yes, Pedro Rizzo's first fight was 16 years ago, so he's been around for a while, too long. Fedor's also been around for a long time. We got to accept that now. Remember, guys, you know, how many years can a guy fight 3 times, 4 times a year? There were times when, in Pride, Fedor fought 4 times a year. Maybe even more. I mean, I'd have to double check it, but I'm pretty sure it was at least 4 times. You know, you can't do that your whole life. 10, 13 years, that's it. It's done, you know? You can't fight at the top anymore. If you want to continue fighting like Dan Severn and one of these guys, then you do it with just, you know, whoever will fight you. You don't do it against the top competition. You can't, you know, you just can't do it. You shouldn't be expected to. You know, Anderson Silva in the next few years, you know, we'll see too. The same thing will happen to him. The next fight, he won't be fighting 5 years from now. And if he is, he'll be doing this type of thing. But yeah, so that's kind of how I feel about it. I still want to see this match go down. I'm still excited because Pedro's going to stand with Fedor. He's going to use his kickboxing, try to, you know, chop down the legs of Fedor with those humongous, you know, legs that he has, thighs with his leg kicks, putting all that power behind it. You know, and this is an exciting fight, I think. Yes, you know, whoever wins the fight doesn't do anything in terms of their place and their standing in the ranking. No, it's just a fun fight. And sometimes we need that. We need to see a fun fight, you know. Yes, the UFC has monopolized MMA to the point now where they've squeezed out almost everybody else to the point where there's like nobody out there that's a big name that isn't in the UFC. Almost nobody. But, you know, it's either Fedor does this type of thing or he retires. I hope after this fight we can get to see him fight somebody like Bobby Lashley or, you know, somebody like that, some big name that's out there not in the UFC. So I am excited for this, but it's better than Fedor retiring. So let's break down this fight. How do I see it going down? Well, they're both around in terms of fighting years around the same age, you know. Pedro Rizzo has beaten a lot of big-name guys early in his career. He beat Mark Coleman, Dan Severn, Josh Barnett, who was a champion, UFC, and might be again. We'll see. He's beaten a lot of guys, a lot of who's who guys. He did lose to Randy Couture a couple times, other guys who has trouble with wrestling, but Fedor's not going to take him down. Fedor's going to stand with him. And Pedro Rizzo could potentially win this fight, using his kicks, using his maybe a head kick, or just chopping down the legs enough. You know, he can potentially win this fight. I still have to go with Fedor, though. I think Fedor's hands are, you know, legendary. His heart is unquestioned. And I don't think he's going to quit. I think he's going to this is going to be an exciting fight. This is going to be a stand-up war, I think. Neither guy is going to go down easy, and I think we're going to see Fedor knock out Pedro Rizzo. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm assuming we're going to see, let's see, the date here is June 21st? Yeah, June 21st, M1 Global event, probably in Russia. Yeah, it's going to be in Russia for sure, at an ice palace there. And yeah, I mean, I'm damn excited to see this. I expect the UFC to counter program it, but you know, put something on. But let's support Fedor, guys. I mean, the guy, you know, a lot of people disrespect him because he didn't go to the UFC, but you have to understand, it wasn't weakness that made him turn away from the UFC. It was strength. It was strength, because this is why these corporations, especially like the UFC, Dana White, Zuffa, these guys, what they're trying to do is monopolize all of the sport. Okay, they're trying to take it over to the point where if these fighters want to make a living outside of the UFC, they can't do it. They literally can't do it. There aren't any other organizations out there to keep buying them up, taking all their fighters, and they do it over and over again. So, you know, they're just trying to basically make as much money as they possibly can off of the fighters. Good for Fedor for trying to get out there, you know, on his own and, you know, partner with M1 Global and run his own business. You know what I mean? He's got this following. He's the greatest fighter of all time, arguable, with Anderson Silva. But, you know, why not try to run his own business? Why not stand and be independent? Be truly independent, you know, and stand up for MMA fighters everywhere and not cower to the big bosses at Zuffa like everybody else has. Power to Fedor, man. I want to support him until the day he either can't fight anymore, and we can see that, or decides not to. And I respect him even more because he didn't go to the UFC. Even though I would have liked to have seen it, I understand that business-wise, You know, he's standing up for fighters everywhere and saying, you know, screw you, UFC, basically, because you know they don't treat fighters right. I mean, the amount of money the fighters make compared to how much the events make is disgusting. It's really really disgusting. They might get, you know, like the total salary of all the fighters on the card in a UFC event would probably be less than 10%, maybe 20%. That's it. That's it. They should get like 30, 40, 50%. You know, they should probably get 50%. 50-50. The fighters get 50% of the revenue after operating costs and everything, and then the UFC takes the other 50. Do they? No. They get like 5%, 10%. The top guys in the main event fights would get, you know, maybe like I said, maybe 3-4%, depending on how much it makes and everything. But then the lower guys get paid like nothing. Like they can't live off of what they. A lot of them can't live off of what they make from the fight. The prelims and stuff, you know, it's not enough to live off of. Those guys need to have jobs during the day and that kind of stuff. So, you know, in terms of what the UFC's done for MMA, partially it's good, but on the other hand, it's bad because for the fighters, if Dana White doesn't like you, you can't do shit. So power to Fedor to say, screw those guys. We're not going to put up with your crap. We're not going to take your low paychecks, and we're not going to make you more rich off of what we have. We're going to do it ourselves. Power to Fedor, power to M1 Global. Later, guys. Peace.